what I want to talk about is something a little bit broader, mutual benefit. It's not always the case what is good for my trading partner is good for me. There can be complex circumstances where I know something that my trading partner does not, or vice versa. There are mixed games. I was recently downtown. I did some shopping for some beautiful local souvenirs for people who want something from Malaysia, from Penang. And I was very proud of myself because I'm a very tough bargainer. And I got them down to the point where I was paying only 3 times as much as any one of you would pay. For me, that's pretty good. Because the merchant knows the foreigner will pay more, the local person knows the market better, knows all the options. I don't. But I was still happy. I paid the price where I thought I was getting a good deal. I knew if I had sent in someone else, they could have gotten a lower price. So there was a case in which the surplus was going to be divided between me and the merchant in some way. I was happy, but I know someone else could have bargained better and gotten more of that surplus. But the general point about trade is it's based on mutual benefit. The expectation that both of us will benefit. Now, without going into any great detail, I want to talk a little bit about different kinds of interaction. When you hear the phrase, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, there is a background of a kind of interaction that people assume to be the norm in human relations. A constant sum game or zero sum game. That is to say that the total sum available is constant. So if you get more, somebody got less. It turns out that does not characterize most human interactions. It does characterize some. When, for instance, the robber steals from me, he gets my 50 ringgit, I have 50 fewer, he has 50 more. That looks like a constant sum game. In fact, it's actually a negative sum game. Because he will expend resources to get money from me, but I will also expend resources to avoid being robbed. The outcome is less. Not constant and not more. Well, we have constant sum games, zero sum games. Most people assume this is the norm in human behavior. So you get these dumb statements which are empirically falsifiable, that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. If you want to go out and look at the data, it does not support that in expanding economies. The rich get richer and the poor get richer, and in fact, the poor get richer at a much faster rate than the rich. It's a more common behavior. But then we have variable sum games. These are the more common. Positive sum games, and trade is a form of a positive sum game. And then, of course, the negative sum game. Violence, robbery, coercion, these tend to be negative sum games. And the reason is, the robber is spending resources to steal from me. I'm spending resources to avoid being robbed. The outcome actually is not positive sum and not even constant sum. And then briefly, I don't want to go into great detail. We have some experts here who are studying these in detail. Juan Fazrul is doing that at university. Different kinds of games can be non-cooperative, cooperative, and mixed. But again, most people assume the background of common thinking is that games are inherently non-cooperative. Think about sports. If one team wins, what does it say about the other team? They lost. Right? One won, the other one lost. That's how we normally think about interaction. It's a common model. And it is, of course, important. It does apply to sports. It does not apply to commerce in most of its manifestations. It does apply somewhat to love. Two people are in love with the same person under most monogamous social orders, one gets to marry, the other one loses, has a broken heart. So these are present in human life, but they're not the only kind of interaction that's available to us. Life is much richer and more complicated than that. Now, when we talk about voluntary interaction, which requires mutual advantage for it to take place, we now want to ask, what kind of advantage? Advantage is also a word that has multiple meanings. There's absolute advantage and comparative advantage. These two are often confused, not only in popular discussions, but even among people who should know better. Quite often it's assumed that the two mean the same. They mean very different things. One of my former dissertation supervisors at Oxford, who was a very intelligent man, made this fundamental mistake in one of his books. It's an attack on free trade. He and I did not agree on anything. But that actually made him a good dissertation supervisor, because he asked me hard questions and forced me to think through difficult problems. But this is a case in which we didn't really disagree. He was ignorant and wrong. In his book, he says, England lost her comparative advantage. If you understand comparative advantage, you will understand that doesn't make any sense. You can lose an absolute advantage, but to lose all your comparative advantage is virtually impossible. And I'll show why in a moment. That was a case in which it wasn't merely that he disagreed with me. He did not understand what the words meant. He's not trained in economics, and that showed. Now, comparative advantage, which is the one that economists focus on, is the foundation of beneficial exchange and society as a whole. I'm going to make a little bit of a dramatic statement. Is the foundation of human society love? We would like to think so. And that's a very common view. Even going back to some of the pre-Socratics. Empedocles, I think it was, argued that love was what brought everything together. And he was going away from human interaction. He saw love as a very powerful force, and indeed it is, to everything in the universe was brought together by the force of love. Empedocles was wrong. Love is not the foundation of society, it's one of the benefits of it. It's one of the outcomes. The foundation is mutual benefit. If it were the case that what is good for other people is always bad for me, if there were not mutual benefit, then we could not be friends. Friendship, love, and solidarity are the fruit of social cooperation, but they're not the foundation of it. They're very important, which has caused people to focus on them. But the ultimate foundation is mutual benefit. And when we have a society in which we can benefit each other, then, and only then, can we enjoy the more sublime pleasures of friendship and solidarity and love. Now, through specialization trade, we can do something really amazing. We can consume more than we can produce. That's a little counterintuitive or paradoxical. How can we consume more than we can produce? I'll give you an example, a simple arithmetical example, based on two completely hypothetical persons. I went